Globally, we buy 80 billion pieces of clothing every year, but how much do we actually know about the stuff that we're buying? If you go shopping on the high street, it's packed full of more and more clothes on constant rotation. And if you look at the label, it says they're made of polyester, or silk, or wool, or viscose, but how do we know how to pick the best fabric so that we can get really well-fitted, long-lasting clothing that's easy to recycle when we don't want it anymore? Unfortunately, there's no magic silver bullet that means that one fabric is definitely better to pick over another. Everyone has its pros and cons, but better the devil that you know, right? First up, we have polyester. Polyester is the world's most commonly used fibre because it's really strong, it's cheap to make, and it doesn't wrinkle, which on paper sounds great. But we make polyester out of a reaction between coal, petrol, air and water, making a plastic. And because it's man-made, it doesn't biodegrade, which is causing big problems for fish who are eating the plastic microfibers that shed off our clothes when we wash them. So this is a 100% cotton shirt. Cotton is great because it's normally really durable and it's also a natural fabric, which as we've learned is really good. The problem with cotton is that it takes a lot of water to produce it, and also it can be quite chemically intensive. A lot of people use a lot of pesticides to make cotton. Organic cotton, if you can find it, is better. It uses a lot less water and a lot less chemicals, but currently it only makes up for about 1% of the cotton that we buy. So this is made from viscose. This is another really commonly produced fabric. It was actually the first man-made fabric that we ever produced, which was loved because how well it draped, which you can see in the skirt. But as well as contributing to the amount of plastics going to the ocean, we cut down around 70 million trees a year to produce viscose, which is about 8 times the amount of trees that are in London. Next up, we have wool. So wool is actually one of the oldest fibres that we ever use to make clothes. It does take a lot of land and water to raise the sheep who we use to get the wool from, but a big benefit is it's a completely natural fibre. So at the end of its life, it should biodegrade, and it's also super easy to recycle, and it's really soft. Silk, despite having a really small share of the market, is one of the most valuable fibres that we produce. So it's made by silkworms, who are actually larvae who eat mulberry leaves, and they produce silk, which is super easy to recycle. You can actually compost it because it's a natural fibre. We are here today at Chris Carey's Collections with Ali. Can you tell us a little bit about the space that we're in at the moment?
This is our textile recycling plant. It's a family-owned business. My mum is Christine Carey of Chris Carey's Collections, and it started with my grandfather, who did this pretty much on a much smaller scale from market stalls.
Yeah.
And over time, it's evolved into what we see today.
We're going to go and have a quick look around the recycling centre to see what happens to all of our clothes after we've given them away. So this is all of the clothing that comes into the recycling centre. And where does it all come from?
We collect from household waste recycling centres, so your local tips. And we also have curbside collections. So you might have seen textile recycling banks out on the street. We provide those as well. We also collect any items of clothing that you may donate to a charity shop that are then unsold.
How many tonnes do you get a day that's coming through?
We collect 25 tonnes a day of material. So this is more than that. That's about 3 days.
Yeah, that's
yeah, it's quite a lot.
So there's a lot of textiles that's moving through the factory every single day.
Yeah.
And do you think there's space for a bigger domestic market for this kind of stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I think people are more conscious now of what they're buying, and I think that you'll see things change in that people now have gone through that whole fast fashion of just being able to buy everything all the time and having loads in their wardrobe and wearing it a couple of times and getting rid of it, to actually spending wisely and buying better quality.
Because it feels nicer, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It fits better.
Yeah, it's cut better.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. And it lasts longer.
And then what happens in the next stage?
So from here, we have lovely chaps that take it round to our sorting tables.
You can just see them over there.
And all these fantastic ladies sort it into 72 different grades. So we have material that goes, it will just go all over the world, and predominantly material is sorted for reuse. In the textile recycling industry, the main markets are a reuse market.
So that's somebody just taking the item of clothing and then using it again as...
Yeah, absolutely. Top of the hierarchy and the best thing that can happen to it, really. So we have markets all over the world. Some of it's tropical, some of it's heavier clothing for colder climates, and we separate it in that way so that it will go to the right part of the world and where it's needed to be reused again.
And when you were talking about the different grades earlier, so what would be a really high grade piece of clothing and what would be a really low grade?
High grade clothing would be something from a good reputable shop or brand, designer brand, they command the most value.
Okay.
And then the lower grade clothing then becomes your fast fashion, and it's not as desirable, and it also, by the time it comes here, it's normally worn out and in not very good condition, and that tends to go to a remanufacturing material rather than a reuse material.
So what kind of stuff would that be that it gets manufactured into?
We don't remanufacture it ourselves, but we export it for remanufacture into sort of insulation materials and flooring and things like that.
And have you seen more of that kind of stuff coming through? Have you seen, over the years you've been working here, more fast fashion and more low grade clothing coming in?
Yeah, over the years people have changed their buying habits. So I think the volume that we receive now has increased, but the quality has decreased. People are definitely buying more clothing, but they're not buying the quality of clothing that they used to buy. And I think we need to turn that full circle. We need to make a conscious effort to buy less, but buy better.
Amazing. So what I wanted to ask was if there are any kinds of materials or fabrics that are easier to recycle than others, if any of them cause problems.
So if it's not something like silk, organic cottons, even normal regular cotton, wool, cashmere, things like that, they're fine. Those products we can recycle them. They're organic. They can even be composted. Once you start using polyesters, nylons, anything that has a plastic part of its manufacturing process, we then have problems. And those materials cause problems anyway because they're feeding plastics into our water system. They're the issues that we really need to concentrate, I think, because we need to be aware of what we're purchasing. I think so many people just go and buy an outfit and they don't look at how it's made, they don't look at what it's made from, and actually in the longer term, looking at the end of life of that garment, possibly it can't be recycled. If you buy quality and you buy natural fibres, then you're buying better than if you're buying a fast fashion made out of nylons and lower grade materials. In the UK, we estimate that there's about 65 million people, and we calculated that each individual in the UK buys approximately 25 kilos of clothing a year, and that's quite a lot of clothing. That's half of one of these. So, and that's compacted, so that's quite, a large bag full of clothing, about that high. And from that 25 kilos of clothing, we throw half of that away. And not everyone's recycling. So a lot of that will be going to landfill rather than coming to places like this to be recycled.
Beyond recycling, the best way to make the most out of our clothes is to pick really durable pieces that we'll wear again and again. If you're not sure what to go for, then have a look through your wardrobe, see which pieces have retained their shapes, which ones have lasted the longest, and find out what they're made of. If you're in a shop and you're looking for some tricks on how to find quality, one thing that you can do is give it a feel. If it feels thin or brittle, then it's probably not going to last very long. Another thing that you can do is hold the fabric up to the light. The tighter the weave is, the more durable it's going to be. And finally, check the buttons. If they're sewn on really tightly and the seams are neat, then more care will have been taken over the clothes and they'll probably last longer. While there's no holy grail to choosing the right fabric, at least you can go into a shop now armed with the knowledge of how to buy the best things for your wardrobe. Next week, we're going to be looking at what the effect of microfibers from our clothes have on the planet, so don't forget to subscribe to be the first in the know.